Hi everyone, I'm Elfels, and welcome to another match analysis for the Newport Noctowls in Season 10 of the Whooper Club League. We're covering Week 5 now. After an off week for the midpoint of the season, our team is still at an undefeated 4-0 record. However, our opponent for this week, the Summit County Psyducks, is also at an undefeated 4-0 record. So we're the only two teams left to make it this far into the season without any losses, so one of those streaks is going to end with this battle. Zach and the Psyducks have a really good team that lives up to the record with Bolthund, Salazzle, Persian, Rapidash Galar, Leafeon, Duraludon, Claydol, Mantine, Scrafty, Aggron, and Golisopod. There are some really good Pokemon here, and as noted in the main channel's draft analysis, Zach had the highest average speed stat in the draft, and he was also able to be the only coach to draft a team without any net weaknesses on the type chart, which is just super impressive. That makes us a really well-built team. I don't see many Pokemon on his side that I can discount, but if I have to pick one or two to call out, I'll start with Aggron. It's got some good stuff. It has some really strong attacking options, plus Stealth Rock, but the environment is a little too hostile for it, with plenty of fighting and ground moves on many of my Pokemon, as well as a nice Mudsdale to be a pretty solid counter to anything like a Choice Band Head Smash set. The other Pokemon that I don't feel too pressured by is Persian, which is sitting at a pretty good speed tier against my team, but it really doesn't do anything that Zach's other fast Pokemon don't, aside from maybe Technician Fake Out to help deal with Raichu in terrain, for example. I think that if I prep well for the other speedy threats on his team, I'm kind of prepped for this Persian anyway already, so that's fine. Now, Rapidash has some more use, being another fast Pokemon that gets at least solid damage against a lot of my team, but it doesn't have a particularly good matchup against anything except maybe Thievul with that fairy typing, so it's just decent overall. Zach's been running it with a calm mindset for most of the season, but I have plenty of physical attackers that threaten it out and stop a lot of that offense overall that wouldn't be able to stop that kind of setup. Surprisingly, I'm also thinking Mantine is niche at best here, because even though it's like a defensive centerpiece of Zach's team so far, it's threatened out really hard by a couple of key members on my offensive side of my team, especially the Electric Terrain Core, and it can't do much back to the Pokemon that does wall. Still, it has some use as an answer to all of Mudsdale, Noivern, and Berserker, so Zach might value that pretty highly in his team building. And then Leafeon is also a niche bring. I don't hate it here because it's pretty strong and bulky, but I do have plenty of natural switch-ins to grass moves and knockoff, so I don't think it will ever be the biggest threat to my team. I'll just have to make sure that I do bring some of those switch-ins and we'll be golden. Now, onto the stuff that I'm really scared of, starting with Duraludon. This guy is really strong and really bulky, with 120 base special attack to work with, and Steel Dragon coverage, which puts a lot of pressure on my team. My usual Dragon switch-in Aromatisse is not an answer here because we take way too much damage from Flash Cannon, and Duraludon is bulky enough to stick around and continue forcing things out throughout the battle. Next up is going to be Salazzle, which also has really limited switching on my team. The Fire Poison Stab coverage is brutal without a Rock type to absorb it, and it also outspeeds just so much of my team, and the one thing that I do have to outspeed at Noivern is just so threatened by it anyway. Bolthund actually plays a very similar role to Salazzle, but it covers a lot of different options, actually forming a really nice fast offensive core that wears things down. This might not be too hard to handle since I do have a nice Bolthund answer in a bulky Mudsdale, and Noivern outspeeds both Bolthund and Salazzle, but these two have the potential to really wear things down with some smart switching and pivoting. And with that, Scrafty makes sense to help clean up a worn down team with either a bulk up or Dragonet set. My best answer in typing alone would be Aromatisse, but Scrafty does outspeed with super effective coverage for it. As for the rest of my team, I'm hard pressed to one-hit KO this guy or even two-hit KO with some of my Pokemon, while it can either boost up or hit back hard immediately. Gonna be kinda hard to deal with. Next up, I think Golisopod makes sense as a way to switch into strong physical moves, while also having some insurance against a Raichu sweep by running First Impression, and even Aqua Jet for some lower health situations. This is just a really scary Pokemon to have to switch into. Like, if I have to switch out because I'm threatened by a priority move or something, I'm one hard read away from losing one of my Pokemon to a strong liquidation. Golisopod just has too much potential for those threatening situations. It can definitely be trade positive with my team if it plays well. And for the last slot, I think Claydol makes a lot of sense as a defensive piece, mostly because it is a stop to the electric types. It's a ground type, of course, while providing some of its own utility with teleport and hazard control. I think it's passive and doesn't do much otherwise, but those positive roles it has are really useful on Zach's side for this matchup, and he's been favoring the Claydol anyway, so I would expect it here. So there's the threats I'm preparing for, and I had a really hard time picking a team for this until I came to the realization that Raichu needs to be left behind for the first time, along with Pincurchin, of course, staying on the bench. Raichu has provided offensive support and pressure that I've been relying on a lot this season, but I think Raichu would just not have the move slots to be that useful in this matchup. We want Rising Voltage, of course, and Surf for Claydol, Focus Blast for Duraludon, and Protect to deal with Glycopod's first impression, and even then we have trouble breaking through Zach's defensive pieces while he can switch around and stall out electric terrain. The Psyducks just aren't weak enough to Raichu for me to want to bring it. But that doesn't mean their team has nothing to exploit. One weakness that might not be obvious on the type chart is a glaring lack of switch-ins to Freeze Dry, so I decided to bring Lapras with choice specs this week. With Freeze Dry as our ice move of choice, the water types are no longer answers to it, and the Psyduck's only ice resists become Salazzle and Aggron, neither of which have the special bulk to take repeated hits, and they're also both weak to Surf, so they're still threatened. Lapras murders things with just Freeze Dry, and Surf is there to threaten those ice resists, so the rest of the moveset is just filler. Ice Beam hits harder if I don't need to target the water types, and Heal Bell is a nice utility since Zach does have a Scald Mantine that could threaten some of the rest of my team with burns. The speed lets us outpace Adamant Aggron to KO with a Surf, and the bulk actually allows Lapras to survive a Jolly Scrafty's close combat from full. I'm going to be playing to give Lapras as many turns as possible to attack with that Freeze Dry, because I think it's going to be a very powerful option for us. And to capitalize on that, Decidueye is here to help clean up after Lapras breaks down the team. We're running a Swords Dance set with Colbur Berry, just like last week, but this time there are definitely more sweeping opportunities with free setup on Claydol and maybe Mantine. Like I said, that Scald might be a little threatening. And from there, Boosted Shadow Sneak does tons of damage to deal with the faster opponents. There are not many Ghost Resists on this team. The Colbur Berry is useful to help survive knockoff from either Persian or Leafeon, as well as Dark Pulse from Duraludon, and Continuous Sweep. And our own Low Sweep is the only coverage we need to deal with that Persian as well as the Scrafty, which we are running the EVs to outspeed. In past weeks, we've been running Decidueye as more offensive utility, but this time we're actually hoping for a much more offensive presence with our 100-point Pokemon. We'll see how well that can play out. And to support that, we of course have Mudsdale, and you've all seen this set before. Earthquake and Body Press only misses out on hitting Claydol this time, and we were never hitting that hard anyway, so Toxic is the move to help deal with that. And as always, Mudsdale is providing a lot of utility with Stealth Rock. This week, Mudsdale is going to be really helpful for dealing with any of Persian, Rapidash, Scrafty, Aggron, and especially Boltund, so it's pretty valuable once again. So far, I have an offensive core plus a physical wall to pivot through that core, but that does leave the special side uncovered. Particularly, Duraludon is still threatening to this team, outspeeding everything I have so far and threatening KOs with this coverage. For example, a Choice Specs Thunderbolt is one of the few attacks from the Psyducks that could one-hit KO Lapras, so I'm definitely afraid of that. My answers to Duraludon are limited, but I decided on Berserker. With its Steel typing and an Assault Vest, we're actually able to handle an attack or two from Duraludon and threaten back with a really strong attack in return. Iron Head, Close Combat, Crunch, and U-Turn, all boosted by Tough Claws, allow us to pick the most appropriate move for the situation to either blast through something on Zach's team or gain momentum for the rest of our team. We don't have any special walls that can consistently deal with Duraludon, so Berserker is designed more to switch into it once or twice and wreak havoc from there. The speed EVs are just 12 EVs there for creeping shenanigans with the Aggron. Next up is going to be the Noivern, who provides another way to handle the faster offensive threats that scare out Lapras and Decidueye. We outspeed everything, including Positive Nature Boltund, and Hurricane is all we need to hit stuff hard. With the special attack investment, we 2-hit KO even the most specially defensive Scrafty, and we also do major damage to most of the other offensive threats. Boltund and Aggron are resists, and Mantine doesn't take too much damage, but we do have other means of dealing with those. This set is built mostly to help deal with the otherwise major threats of Leafeon and Glycopod, while also providing defog support and pivoting around with U-Turn. And in the last slot, Blaziken is once again here as an offensive glue piece, and we're running a Choice Scarf this time. With the Scarf, we outspeed every unboosted threat, and Blaziken's coverage allows it to break past all the offensive Pokemon that we need it to. There's not too much else to this set. Scarf Blaziken does feel like the obvious choice, but that's just because it's so good in this matchup to deal with all those faster threats, so it's okay if it's telegraphed. This is also my third U-turn user as well. Like I said earlier, we're trying to give as many free turns as possible to Lapras to break the team down, so the name of the game this week is Momentum. With all this said, let's see how we can apply this playstyle to the actual match. Wow, I was pretty far off. Mantine over Glycopod makes enough sense as a different water type, but no Duraludon or Scrafty as well, replaced by Leafeon and Rapidash. This is a much faster offensive team than I was expecting, which means Lapras might have a harder time breaking, but on the bright side, without Duraludon here, we have room to play Berserker a lot more liberally, and that'll help us deal with the Rapidash and Leafeon brings. As far as the lead goes, well, I wanted to put early pressure on with the Lapras, so why not just lead with it? A Boltund or Leafeon lead would be bad for that, but we do have switch-ins for those anyway, and any other lead would be a great matchup, so good luck to Zach. And ooh, very nice. We see a Claydol lead. While I shouldn't actually want to KO it because it is so bulky, we do tons of damage with just Freeze Dry, so I see no reason not to go for it. As we do though, the Rapidash comes in to take it, and we do more than half. So we're off to a good start. This actually presents a problem though, since I don't know what this Rapidash set is, so I don't really have a safe answer to it right now. A physical attacking set with Wild Charge would be deadly to Lapras, so I don't feel safe staying in. But that same set could also have coverage for anything on my team, and a special attacking set would be bad news for Mudsdale. I decide that a Wild Charge or a High Horsepower as a read for Berserker is coming, and those would be the most threatening things, so I decided to respond to those. I'm going to make the switch to Decidueye to resist that and follow up with a ton of offensive pressure of my own. And as I switch in, turns out Rapidash is just going to go for a Morning Sun, so this just feels like a calm mindset, I think. Interestingly enough, I'm not seeing any item yet, no leftovers there, so maybe this Rapidash is running itemless to avoid Poltergeist? I'm not sure, but I can't exactly afford to let it set up, so I'm going to go for it anyway. I just need that power right now. So on this turn, I'm going to take a light Mystical Fire. It looks like a bulkier set from the Rapidash. Then I'm going to KO right back with a successful Poltergeist, which revealed the weakness policy. That's actually the same set that got Zach such a dominant victory against the Close Combat Club in a previous week, so I'm glad I was able to deal with that early. Leafeon is going to be the revenge kill, and although I can survive a knockoff with my Colbur Berry, there's not much to gain by doing that, and I do have an easy switch in with Noivern anyway, so I'll do that. As I come in, frisk the Scope Lens, interestingly enough, and take a knockoff, lose my boots. Well, at this point, I can try to claim an easy KO here with Hurricane on the Leafeon, but it's pretty clear in my mind that this Leafeon has no business staying in on something that both walls it and threatens the KO, so U-turn is going to be the play to keep the momentum going, I think. And on this turn, I do get the call out correctly, U-turn out of the Mantine, and would you look at that, Lapras is back in to threaten with another Freeze Dry. With the bulky Rapidash gone, Zach's team is already losing options to switch into this on turn 5, and it's going to be what's going to switch in to take it, but the Boltund, which will actually go down to 20%, but it will be able to threaten me back, of course, so Lapras is going to have to switch out here. Mudsdale is going to feel like the easy play, and we're trying to block the electric move, but Zach actually makes a double switch out to Salazzle, which feels like a weird play. I'm not sure what he was expecting, if not the Mudsdale. Maybe the Decidueye to resist electric, I'm not sure. Regardless, even with a Choice Specs Fire Blast, the Salazzle wouldn't be able to KO me from full, so I have no problem just going for an Earthquake. And that is going to go into the Leafeon switch-in. Cute little crit that probably doesn't matter too much. With Leafeon threatening hard hit, the Noivern was going to be a play, but you know, this Berserker was also an easy play. As my switch-in, Leafeon decides to recover off the damage with this Synthesis, and now my U-turn is even more free than before with Noivern, since I'll still gain momentum even if the Leafeon stays in, since I move after it. It is of course not going to, because I wall it, and the U-turn is going to go into Mantine, and once again, I'm back in the same matchup, Lapras versus Mantine. This is going really well for me, keeping this momentum, threatening this Mantine out consistently. Now at this point, I did think about changing up the move to possibly Surf, since it looks like Salazzle is the only Pokemon Zach has left that can stomach an Ice move. But honestly, why overpredict? The game is going in my favor right now, and Freeze Dry will still chunk the Frail Fire type decently well. And that is indeed what happens. Here's the Freeze Dry for decent damage, and the Freeze. I have to admit, that's really, really unfortunate. This Salazzle could have been pretty threatening, but now Zach really doesn't have any more freeze dry switch-ins, and this Salazzle is no longer applying any pressure right now. From here, I actually didn't remember and didn't think to look up which fire moves unfreeze the user, so I thought Salazzle might have something to unfreeze itself. So I decided I wanted to swap into Blaziken to resist the potential fire move. But as I do that, the Salazzle is just going to stay frozen. Turns out Salazzle isn't going to run anything like that, but here we are with the Blaziken anyway, and we can kind of do whatever we want right now. I'm not exactly sure what Zach wants to do with this Salazzle at this point. Maybe he wants to sack it, so I'm not going to try to gain momentum with U-turn, do like no damage. Instead, I'm going to go for the close combat, which should 2-hit KO even through the resist, while avoiding that pesky mischance from Stone Edge. Zach will switch though into Claydol and tanks that close combat decently well. Honestly, not that well for a resist on a wall, but anyway, I'm threatened out at this point. This is not a good position with Blaziken locked into close combat, and it does feel like we've lost some momentum. But let's actually take a look at the state of the game and what would happen if Decidueye came in right now to set up a Swords Dance. This Claydol is probably going for an Earthquake at worst, and then there are two Pokemon in range of boosted Shadow Sneak, a Mantine that will go down to a boosted Poltergeist, and a Leafeon that can only threaten with a knockoff into my Colbur Berry. Hard switching in right now might expose me to enough damage that knockoff still takes me out from that Leafeon, but if there was ever a game to get a Decidueye sweep off, it's this one and this turn. I'm going to take that opportunity. And Decidueye is going to switch in safely on the rock setup. Okay, so next turn we Swords Dance, as Zach's actually going to switch out to Preserve Claydol. This could be it, as the Mantine's in now. I'm just going to go for a Poltergeist here, and claim Decidueye's second KO of the game on the Mantine. And then Leafeon makes sense as the follow-up. We do take a hard knockoff before doing 97% back with the Poltergeist. Dang, Leafeon's bulky, but Shadow Sneak will finish it off. From here, there's no more counterplay left from the Psyducks side. Shadow Sneak is going to take out the offensive threats, Boltund goes down, and then Salazzle. And the Claydol is all that's left. The Poltergeist is going to take that down for the 6-0 victory. Glad that all four of my Poltergeists hit this game. That was fortunate. But anyway, good game to Zach. I think he played well, but part of this can be chalked up to a brutally hard matchup against Freeze Dry, as well as a freeze on that Salazzle, really setting the team back during their one chance to apply pressure back to me. That's really unlucky. I would have liked to see a game where that Salazzle was actually able to do something. Could have changed the results a little bit, but hey, that is how it goes sometimes. As far as my play goes, I'm really happy with how well my game plan panned out. Lapras applied so much pressure early, and the rest of the team helped with that by pivoting back around into Lapras where necessary, kept threatening out that Mantine. That was really great. And that just made it so hard for the Psyducks to respond with much offense of their own. They were too busy pivoting around to avoid my attacks. Then, of course, Decidueye claimed all 6 KOs in this match. It's great to finally see it as a star of battle in the 5th week of the season. And to be fair, the stars did align for that to happen, with a team very much weakened by Lapras and a Claydol in as setup fodder, but I would still give the MVP title this week to Decidueye, easily. And that's a wrap on week 5. With this game complete, that left us as the only undefeated team remaining for the season. With only 3 weeks left to play of the regular season schedule, an undefeated run is in grasp, but that won't come easy, especially in week 6 after this, in which I play the Buffalo Bouffalont, coached by Illogic, who I would argue as being the highest skilled player in the league, and also the only team to beat me in a regular season so far, in Season 8. Join me for that video to see what happens in that exciting battle. See you next time.